The evening was thick with heat, the kind that settles into your bones and makes every breath feel like a chore. I sat sprawled on the old plaid couch in the living room, a cotton dress sticking to my thighs, fanning myself with a dog-eared copy of Field and Stream. The air hung heavy, ripe with the promise of a storm that had been teasing the horizon all day. Out here in the sticks, 30 miles from anything resembling a town, the house creaked under the weight of that stillness, like it was waiting for something to give. The power flickered, on, off, on again, casting jittery shadows from the single bulb overhead. I sighed, letting the magazine flop onto my lap, and wiped a bead of sweat from my brow. 4 years had passed since Tom's heart gave out, leaving me alone in this creaky old place. I was 42 now, widowed too long, sharp-tongued when I needed to be, but softer around the edges than I'd ever admit. The ache of losing him had dulled, sure, but it never really left, just sat there, quiet and steady, like a shadow stitched to my heels. Tonight, though, it felt different, restless, alive. Maybe it was the storm brewing outside, the way the clouds piled up, dark and swollen, mirroring something stirring deep in my chest. I shifted, the fabric of my dress sliding against my skin, and took a slow sip from the lukewarm iced tea on the coffee table. The glass sweated as much as I did, leaving a ring on the wood. The screen door banged open, pulling me out of my haze. Lucas stepped in from the garage, shirtless, a greasy rag slung over one shoulder. At 24, he was all lean muscle and restless energy, his dark hair a mess from running his hands through it. Grease streaked his forearms, and a faint sheen of sweat clung to his chest, catching the flickering light. He'd been out there half the day, tinkering with that beat-up Chevy truck his dad left behind. Tom's son, not mine, but close enough after all these years. He tossed the rag onto the armrest and grunted a low, "Hey," his voice rough from the heat. "Hot enough for you?" I shot back, my tone dry as the cracked earth outside. He smirked, just a flicker of it, and wiped his hands on his jeans, the denim clinging low on his hips. I caught myself watching the way his shoulders flexed, broad and solid like Tom's used to be, and snapped my eyes back to the window. The glass was smudged, framing a sky that looked ready to burst. "Storm's taking its sweet time," I muttered, more to myself than him. "Yeah," he said, crossing to the fridge in the corner. The hinges squeaked as he yanked it open, pulling out a bottle of water. He tipped it back, throat working as he drank, and I found my gaze drifting again, down the line of his collarbone, the way the light played off the damp skin. It wasn't like me to notice, not like that. Lucas was my stepson, a piece of the life I'd shared with Tom, back when this house felt full. Now we just rattled around in it, polite but distant, like two strangers sharing a roof. He was young, still figuring himself out, and I was, well, a widow, trying to make sense of a world that didn't fit anymore. I stood, smoothing my dress, and crossed to the window, needing something to do with my hands. The air outside was dead, no breeze, just the faint drone of cicadas, and a low rumble of thunder rolling in from the west. "Power's been flaky all day," I said, glancing back at him. He nodded, setting the bottle down, his fingers leaving faint smudges on the glass. Up close, I could smell the garage on him, oil and metal, mixed with something earthier. He looked at me then, his dark eyes steady, and for a split second, I felt it. A flicker of something I couldn't name, sharp and unwelcome. "Gonna grab a shower," he said, breaking the moment. He turned, bare feet padding across the hardwood, leaving me standing there with my heart thudding a little too fast. I pressed my palm against the cool window pane, watching the clouds churn, and told myself it was just the heat messing with my head. But deep down, I knew better. The storm was coming, and it wasn't just the thunder I could feel in the air. The living room felt smaller after Lucas headed off to shower, the air still thick with that sticky heat. I'd settled back onto the couch, legs tucked under me, the cotton dress riding up just enough to let my skin breathe. The power had been teasing us all evening, flickering like a nervous heartbeat, and I was halfway through telling myself to grab a candle when it gave up entirely. The bulb overhead winked out, plunging the room into a soft, murky dark. A low rumble of thunder rolled through the house, close enough to rattle the windows, and I cursed under my breath. Great, just what I needed. I stood too fast, meaning to dig out the old candlesticks from the kitchen drawer. My foot caught the edge of the rug. Damn thing's been a hazard since Tom bought it, and I pitched forward, arms flailing. I didn't hit the floor. Instead, my hands landed on something warm and solid, Lucas's bare shoulders. He'd come back into the room, quiet as a shadow, fresh from the shower with just a towel knotted around his hips. His skin was damp under my fingers, warm from the water, and I felt the muscle tense as he caught me. His hands gripped my arms, steadying me, and for a heartbeat, we were locked there, my chest heaving from the stumble. "You okay?" His voice was low, rough around the edges, like he'd just woken up. The faint scent of soap clung to him, cutting through the humid air. "Yeah, just clumsy," I muttered, pulling back too quick. My fingers slid off his shoulders, brushing down his chest, smooth, firm, still slick from the shower. A jolt shot through me, sharp and electric, and I froze when his towel slipped an inch. My hand grazed something lower, hard, unmistakable, and my breath snagged in my throat. Heat flooded my cheeks, nothing to do with the stifling room, and I yanked my hand away like I'd touched a live wire. He fumbled with the towel, tugging it back into place. "Sorry," he mumbled, the word half swallowed, rough with something that sounded like embarrassment. I couldn't look at him, not right away. My eyes darted to the window instead, where the first jagged streak of lightning cracked the sky, throwing a silver glow across the room. It lit him up for a second, his broad frame, the way the towel hugged his hips. And I wished it hadn't. Our eyes met then, caught in that fleeting light. His were dark, steady, searching mine like he was waiting for me to say something, anything. I couldn't. The silence stretched too long, heavy with whatever it was crackling between us, something I didn't want to name. My heart slammed against my ribs, loud enough I swore he could hear it over the distant thunder. I stepped back, putting the coffee table between us, my fingers flexing at my sides like they didn't know what to do with themselves. "Gonna find a light," he said finally, breaking the spell. He turned, bare feet scuffing the floor, and disappeared down the hall. I stood there, rooted, the memory of that accidental touch burning into my skin. My palm still tingled where it had brushed him, warm, solid, too much, and I pressed it against my thigh, trying to shake it off. The air felt charged now, like the storm had slipped inside, coiling tight in my chest. I sank back onto the couch, staring at the blackened window, as rain started to tap against the glass, slow and uneven. Lucas was Tom's boy, not mine, a piece of a life I'd borrowed for a while. He was too young, too close, too everything. But that didn't stop the way my mind snagged on it. The feel of him under my hands, the way he'd steadied me without a second thought. It was wrong. I knew it down to my bones, but the thought wouldn't let go. The thunder growled again, closer this time, and I wondered if the storm was here to drown it out, or light it up. Midnight crept in, and the house was still a furnace, the storm outside spitting rain but refusing to break the heat. I couldn't sleep, too restless, too wired. So I wandered to the kitchen, my bare feet sticking to the linoleum. A loose tank top clung to my back, damp with sweat, and a pair of cut-off shorts hugged my hips, the frayed edges brushing my thighs. The power was out again, leaving the room in a soft, inky dark, save for the faint glow of lightning flickering through the window. I grabbed a glass from the counter, filled it with tap water, and leaned against the sink, sipping slow. The coolness slid down my throat, but it did nothing for the heat simmering under my skin. The memory of that stumble in the living room wouldn't leave me. My hands on Lucas's shoulders, that accidental brush lower. It stuck like a burr, sharp and persistent, and I hated how it kept tugging at me. I took another sip, staring at the rain-smeared glass, when the soft pad of footsteps broke the quiet. I didn't turn, but I knew it was him. My pulse kicked up, a traitor to the calm I was trying to hold on to. Lucas wandered in, shirtless, a pair of loose shorts slung low on his hips. The fridge door creaked as he opened it, the weak light spilling out, painting shadows across his chest. He pulled out a beer, popping the cap with a flick of his thumb, and I watched from the corner of my eye, His movements were easy, unhurried, like he owned the space, confident in a way that made it hard to look away. He took a long pull, the bottle glinting as he tilted it back, and I caught myself tracing the line of his jaw, the way his throat moved. I snapped my gaze back to my glass, fingers tightening around it. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice low, rough with the late hour. It rolled through the room, stirring the stillness. "Too damn hot," I said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I tipped my glass toward him, a half-hearted toast. "Thought water might help." He nodded, leaning against the counter across from me, the beer dangling from his fingers. The fridge light had dimmed when he shut the door, but the next flash of lightning lit him up. His broad shoulders, the faint ripple of muscle under his skin. Our eyes caught, and the air thickened, heavy with something I couldn't dodge. I swallowed hard, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You're built different, huh?" He froze, bottle halfway to his lips, then set it down slow, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Guess so," he said, voice dropping an octave. "Takes some adjusting." My cheeks burned, and I cursed myself for saying it, but his eyes stayed on mine, steady, like he was daring me to keep going. I shifted, the counter cool against my lower back, and pressed on, softer now, almost teasing. "You comfortable with it? Girls say anything?" He chuckled, a low rumble that sent a shiver down my spine despite the heat. "Takes some getting used to," he admitted, shifting his weight, the shorts sliding a fraction lower. "They usually say it's a lot." Pride flickered in his gaze, and something stirred in me, deep, unbidden, and dangerous. The hum of the storm outside filled the silence, rain tapping harder now, a steady rhythm against the roof. Our hands brushed as he slid the beer across the counter, offering me a sip. His fingers were warm, rough from the garage, and the contact sent a jolt through me, quick and sharp. I took the bottle, my lips touching where his had been, and sipped, the bitter taste doing nothing to cool the flush creeping up my neck. He watched me, eyes dark and unreadable, and I handed it back, our fingers grazing again. "Storm's picking up," I said, voice shaky, needing to fill the space. He nodded, but he didn't move, didn't look away. The tension coiled tighter, the air between us buzzing like a live wire. I set my glass down, the clink loud in the quiet, and he stepped closer, just a half step, but enough to make the room feel smaller. My breath hitched, and I turned away, pretending to adjust the blinds, but I could feel him there, filling the space, pulling at me like the thunder rolling closer. He didn't say anything else, just grabbed his beer and headed back down the hall, his silhouette swallowed by the dark. I stayed put, heart pounding, the taste of him still on my lips. The storm hadn't broken yet, but something inside me was already cracking. The next evening, the storm still hadn't let up. Rain hammering the roof, wind rattling the shutters, but the heat clung stubborn as ever. The power was out again, leaving the house draped in shadows, and I'd spent the day pacing, restless, my thoughts snagged on that kitchen moment with Lucas. His voice, low and rough, saying, "It's a lot," echoed in my head, a dangerous thread I couldn't stop tugging. By dusk, I found myself drifting toward the garage, drawn by the faint clatter of tools and the flicker of a lantern perched on the workbench. The air in there was thick, oil and damp earth mixing with the rain's musk seeping through the cracked window. Lucas was bent over an old lantern, his hands steady as he twisted a wire, the glow catching the sweat on his bare back. He'd ditched his shirt, just a pair of faded jeans hugging his hips, and I leaned against the workbench, the cool metal biting into my lower back. My shorts rode up as I crossed my legs, the denim tight against my thighs, and I caught him glancing, quick, then away. Thunder growled outside, close enough to shake the walls. "Still curious about you," I said, my voice soft but edged with a tease I couldn't hold back. His hands stilled on the lantern, and he turned slow, dark eyes locking onto mine. They were unreadable, deep pools that made my pulse skip, and for a moment I thought he'd brush it off, tell me to quit. But he didn't. His chest rose faster, matching the thud in my own ribs, and the air crackled, like the storm had slipped inside with us. "It's dark," I added, daring now, my words barely a whisper. "Power's off. Let me just feel it. I won't see a thing." I stepped closer, deliberate, the concrete cold under my bare feet. His jaw tightened, and I saw the hesitation flicker across his face, a split second where I thought he'd say no. Then, almost too slight to catch, he nodded. My heart slammed against my chest, loud as the rain, and my hand trembled as I reached out. My fingers brushed the denim, rough, warm from him, and found what I'd glimpsed before. He was already firm, the size unmistakable even through the fabric, and a jolt shot through me, hot and sharp. I moved slow, testing, tracing the outline, feeling the heat radiate into my palm. He tensed, a low breath hissing out, and his hands gripped the workbench, knuckles whitening. "Grace," he whispered, my name a warning wrapped in a plea, rough and ragged. I didn't stop. My touch grew bolder, palm pressing against him, fingers curling just enough to feel the way he pulsed under my hand. His breathing hitched, ragged now, and a groan slipped from him, low, guttural, like it had been dragged out. Then, with a sharp intake, he finished, the tension snapping like a wire. His body shuddered, and I froze, my hand still there, the weight of it sinking in. The lantern hummed faintly, its light flickering across the greasy tools, the only sound besides our uneven breaths. I pulled back, my hand shaking, and he exhaled hard, shoulders slumping as he leaned heavier against the bench. His eyes met mine, dark, raw, searching, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. The air was thick, charged, the storm outside pounding like it wanted in. I could still feel him on my fingertips, the heat, the shape, and it burned into me, a mark I couldn't shake. I stepped away, the concrete scraping under my heels, and he straightened, running a hand through his damp hair. "You didn't have to," he muttered, voice hoarse, like he was wrestling with it too. I didn't answer, just turned, my thoughts a mess of guilt and something sharper, hotter, that I didn't want to name. The lantern's glow danced on the walls as I slipped back into the house, the rain a steady drum behind me. Inside, I stood at the kitchen sink, hands braced on the edge, staring at the blacked-out window. Lightning split the sky, throwing jagged light across the yard, and I saw my reflection, wide-eyed, flushed, a stranger to myself. What I'd done, what I'd wanted, hung over me like a heavy coat pressing down. It was wrong, every bit of it. But the thrill wouldn't let go, coiling tight in my gut. The storm raged on, relentless, and I wondered if it had washed this away, or if I even wanted it to. Lucas's groan still echoed in my ears, and I knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross.